I'll start with you, Kaija, because I cannot not ask, how was it starting your own company in 1982? I mean, if we say that tech is a man's world now, like, how was it then?
Yeah, I would like to go back to Susanna and say that, yeah, in Finland, I've been sitting many times by myself when all the men went to sauna and had all the discussions there. I always, when I went to meetings, I had a book with me because I knew that I will be by myself. However, we have improved in Finland because nowadays what we do is that in 27th of February in Oulu, quite high up north, we have an event called Polar Bear Pitching, where we put both male and female founders in swimsuits in a hole in the ice. And they have to do their pitching in the very cold water. And they have to convince the investor. So we are totally equal now. It's the same for men and women.
Is it even shorter than the elevator pitch?
Well, some people can talk surprisingly long in the +4 water. So yeah, but I like the idea. Okay, so going back to what was it like? Yeah, it was different. And I would say that being a woman in tech, so my background is I studied at the University of Technology. I started with physics, theoretical physics. Then I realized I love applied mathematics more. There were 70 of us, 4 girls, women. It was the most equal place I probably have been in my entire life. Because, hey, everybody was interested in physics. We all were considered rather weird. But there wasn't this like, oh, why are you here? You are a girl. Because it was just this interest in the topic. And then later on, I realized that, okay, interestingly enough, that time, and still surprisingly much, there is, when the previous panel talked about bias, I wonder why there is a bit of, if a woman is in tech, it was the tech, the final frontier for women. Many men seemed not to be quite comfortable about it. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, the ones who were really, really nice. So I would say that it's really important to empower women, and I do a lot of mentoring and coaching for women. But what I do also is I coach a lot of men, because I think that it's important that young men learn to work with older women like me and listen to me. But to me, it's really, and I don't want to be idealistic here, there are gaps to fill and so on, but we have to learn to listen to each other. Women have to learn to listen to men and understand why the investors have this bias, because if we go like, oh, you are terrible, that doesn't necessarily lead us anywhere. Men need to learn to work with women, actually, from the audience. So first of all, like, who of you work in an environment where your boss is a woman? Great.
Wow.
Have anyone invested in a company that is founded by women? Brilliant. Thank you. I want to have Miro to rise and show his T-shirt, because I met him in the morning. I love this. And this is what... Woo! To me, this is what we need. Yes, and I'm all for women need environments where they can talk with other women and share. But if we go to that alone, then we create another bubble. Mm-hmm. And I don't like bubbles. I do think that, all innovation loves diversity. And whether it's gender diversity, whether it's age diversity, I mean, I've been told that, oh, Kaija, come on, you are a dinosaur. You were an entrepreneur at a time, long time ago, and things have changed. But we have experiences. I love talking to young people because I learn from them a lot. So there are different kinds of diversities. All women are not the same. All men are not the same. So putting us into women and men is not good. Final thing, and I'm sorry for the long answer, I'm saying though that, honestly, women, we are 50% of the market. And business is about going to the market. So why on earth would you want to not listen to 50% of what your market is?
Mm-hmm. Gabriela, why are you still a minority? Like, why is there so few women founders? Is it difficult to be a female founder in today's world?
Yeah, that That is a very good question. I have been thinking about how the environment has changed over years. Maybe I remember 20 years ago when I was a young girl thinking about maybe what I want to become in the world. I actually don't remember in that time to see a lot of role models from a female business leading sector, and also I don't remember so much awareness about the need to empower women. And I think that changed, and this is amazing to see initiatives like the girls that were just here before us about what they are doing in the sector, and also a lot of other great ways in which women can meet each other and can empower each other, and also how men are now stepping up. However, I still find myself alone many times. I'm in the rooms of 20 other men discussing some important topics or negotiating something that is happening, and I stop myself and in that moment, and I see the need to work further on that and to create environment with respect and equality for women, but also for people from other paths of life, whether it's other nationality, age, and etc.
Do you sometimes, when you're alone in this room full of men, do you sometimes feel that the discussion would go different, or that people would just treat you differently if you were a man, just like them?
Yeah, one thing that, communication is a key part of my work. I communicate with partners and clients from all around the world. So I'm trying to always understand the differences in communication. And I have been thinking about that one thing that really helps me to do that is to understand the high context and low context cultures. And I think that this is also somehow transferable in the differences of the communication of women versus men. Women are thinking a little bit differently. We are more intuitive, we are more analytical, and we also know how to read in between the lines and how to read more from the context. So when we are communicating, we have this bias also towards the other party that they will understand. However, I see that men are more straightforward, more maybe a little bit aggressive in the way how they convey their ideas. And this gap sometimes can create misunderstanding or maybe a little bit weaker position of a woman if she is set in an environment which is predominantly manly.
What's the gender ratio in Recombee?
That's a good question. I think we are trying to empower women, definitely, but we are very in very male-dominated industry. Most of our team are data scientists, and even though in every hiring process, I think we are even biased towards hiring women, it's very hard for us to find it. So currently, I think it's around 15%. Yeah.
Kaija, you're on the other side now. You were a founder, now you're a mentor, investor yourself. So what are your strategies?
Well, first of all, let me say one thing, first of all, about quotas. And this is something that, people, and I think that women allowed this to be used against them, because when there was a question of, well, you have to have quotas, you have to have women in, boards of directors and so on. So what was the comeback from the men? Well, because women they are not qualified enough, so we have to resort to quotas. Well, I actually think that sometimes you have to have quotas because that forces people to say, okay, there are actually women and they are qualified. Same thing with tech. Oh, well, we can't find qualified women. Well, I say that, well, look a little bit more and you can find. And one thing that I do want to point out, the EIC now has the Scaling Club initiative, which is for 120 companies they have selected to become the next unicorns. Over half of them have female founders or CEOs. And they said they intentionally, when they were looking for the companies they said we were looking for companies founded by women or which had female executives.
Mm-hmm.
And they said we actually found them when we really looked. But it took more looking. So things are changing. So my strategy is really like, yes, first of all, you need to look sometimes more. I introduce people a lot to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So what I find is that, like I said, a lot of men say, oh, we can't find qualified women. And I say, okay, well, I know some. So why don't you guys talk? And then they realize that, okay, actually, when they look a little bit further, there are options. I do say also that, okay, so when I talk to women, and one of the things I say that you have to learn one thing. If you become an entrepreneur and you think of becoming a female founder, one thing you have to accept is you will make mistakes. And as the previous panel said, I do notice a difference between, okay, male founders, they make a mistake and they say, oh, damn, that was a mistake, and then they go further. What does a female founder do? Oh my God, I made a mistake. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. And for 2 weeks at least, they lose sleep because they are like, oh, why did I make the mistake? Well, you know what? You make mistakes, you learn. But women, in general, women still have a tendency of, because of a bit of a different way of thinking and less risk. And we feel that, oh, we were stupid when we made a mistake. No, we were not stupid. We were qualified, and sometimes we make bad decisions, and then we learn from that. Mm-hmm. And that is really, really important to go in there. One final thing about communication. So the advantage of being 64, what I am now, is that I've realized that, okay, I'm not very quiet and talk a lot and so on, but I noticed that because I have a mind of an engineer, so I think very much like men tend to think. And then when I communicate that, I've heard so many times, oh, she's very aggressive. Oh, she's a bitch. She's like, she's talking all the time and so on. And then when I actually would measure the time I spend talking when I'm the only woman with the men, I speak much less than them, but they think that, oh, I spoke a lot. So there is this thing that, yeah, there is still the bias. And this is why I say I coach a lot of men too, so that they realize that you can work with women and maybe, you learn to listen to them and let them think differently, especially women in tech, because they normally go to tech because they are interested in that, and then they tend to think like that.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I would add to that this imposter syndrome that we sometimes have when we are in this environment, we shouldn't think in a way that they let us in. They didn't let us in. We are there because we are the best in what we are doing. There is a reason why we are there. So we need to speak up. We need to communicate our viewpoints and be heard and respected, rather than focus on being liked, because that might be a way to go.
Thank you very much for this. You actually ran into a question from someone in the audience. He's asking, what strategies have helped you succeed in a male-dominated industry? Is there something that you want to add on, or do we move into a next question?
I think, okay, couple of things. Keeping a sense of humor. Yeah, I mean, I've heard every single blonde woman joke probably in the world. And yeah, you know what? I could get really offended and I still think that it's wrong. But after a while, I realized, hey, it's not about me. It's the guys who tell the joke. They are the ones who lose. I don't have to defend myself against it. And I'm like, okay, if you have to tell those jokes to me, it's your loss, not mine. Mm-hmm. So, but really the strategy is, okay, exactly as you said, don't get into that. So all women, don't get into, they let us in. But at the same time, I do say don't get overly combative either, because that doesn't lead anywhere, because you wouldn't like, as women, that, men would be very combative against you. Why would you think that the men would like it? Final thing, things do change. In Finland, let's say in 70s, 80s, almost all the doctors were men. Now a big majority are women because girls do well at school and they go to study. And same with lawyers. So we actually are seeing through education when it is a long-term thing. But when it starts changing and you get more girls studying things, we do need more girls studying STEM. But for example, in Finland, a couple of years now already, quantum physics has more female students than male students. Amazing. I'm really happy.
For me,
Gabriela.
I would just like to add, so those two things that I mentioned, difference in communication style and as well trying to know that I'm there because I belong. The third thing for me is not changing who I am just because I am in this environment, and rather I'm trying to build on my strengths while understanding the differences.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting question from the audience: what are the main changes that men need to do to support more women empowerment in tech?
Definitely in tech, like I said, do understand that there are women who think like engineers, which is a very male way of thinking. So, it's okay. Like I said, all women are not similar. And all men are not similar, but there is still a bit of a tendency of, women are similar. No, we are not. We are very curious about things and so on. So that's one thing. Also, spend more time with women and go to events where there are women. I think, Mira, you said in the morning when we talked that you were in one event where you were one of the very few men in the event when everybody, all the others were women. And as I said, we need such events where there are, women only. But at the same time, I would like to have much more of this, like 50-50, because that's how we get to talk to each other. That's how we understand each other more. If we do too much of the bubbles, we don't learn how to understand each other and how to communicate.
Wouldn't it be amazing if men actually came to these women empowerment sessions? Gabriela, do you want to add on?
Yes, for me, what is really amazing is that when my colleagues are also sharing the stories and their responsibility outside of the work, which are about caretaking, either children, elderly parents, and so on. Because I think that discussing that also at the workplace opens the door for understanding of the work-life balance needs. And I think these topics shouldn't be taboo, and we should start to share the responsibilities also outside of the workplace.
Mm-hmm. There's a question. If you have faced the problem mentioned in the previous panel that business invested only by women struggle with future investment, I know Recombee is self-funded, but do you want to answer, Kaija?
Yeah, I mean, I do relate to that. So there is still this like, you are a female founder, you got funded only by women, or you got funded just because you are a woman. Again, something that time will change this. And what I do say that especially in the Nordics, we now have much more funds, not just angel investors as women, but VCs who are really like, they have a lot of women there. And you can see the difference immediately. And I think that then changes also the attitude. The more women we have in the VCs, the less they will say, your first investors were women, so we don't invest in you, because they understand it. So I think that the change comes through that. And there, again, like I said, it's good to say there are men, at least in the Scandinavian VC world still nowadays, who do hire women, who take women as partners and so on. And because the main reason is I've talked with them and they say, either it's you are 50%, women are 50% of the market, or they really find really qualified women and they know how good they are in doing the work. Quite frankly, they many times say, you have a female CEO and they are able to coordinate things and manage things quite well. I sometimes say the fact that women are more timid and so on. let's make it into a positive thing. It's much nicer to work with a woman for whom it's not about ego tripping and sort of, hey, you know, I am this and that. I mean, who would like to have Donald Trump as somebody to invest in, basically? Because I think that we need to see always that it's yin and yang. There are two sides of the coin. So when there is a weakness, think about, well, how can I make it into a strength? And there is this old saying that, okay, just because women are often the primary caregivers and so on, my God, they are good organizers. And so in my first company, we had 6 business units after we had been growing, and 5 of them were run by women, because I said, okay, I did appoint them there. And then the men liked it a lot because they could see that that happens. And then after they went to work somewhere else, they took that culture with them.
Unfortunately, our time's up, but there's one last question that I really want to hear an answer to. I don't know if you've been here in the morning, but there was slightly majority of men in the audience, like maybe 60%, I would say. The question is, why do you think there are fewer men than women in the auditorium right now? Please just be quick, but I want to hear the answer. Yeah, like why are there fewer men now than women? Because in the morning it was the other way around.
Because this is about empowering women, and men think that, oh, this is what women want to talk about. Kudos to all of you men.
Yes,
thank you for coming. You are doing the thing that we should be seeing. And yeah, all women in the audience, be very happy that these men are here, because that's how the change starts, really.
Yeah, I assume and I hope that many men are starting to recognize the importance for the diversity and for getting more women into their business or the business. However, maybe they think that women will take care of it themselves. So,
okay, so first, thank you to everyone who came, men and women. Men, please tell your friends, your male friends, to come more into sessions like this. And Kaija, Gabriela, thank you so much for sharing your experience here today on the stage.